Judge Napolitano, we need to get him juiced up more, don't we? I mean, if we could just get him out of that shell he kind of tucks down into, and Dinesh D'Souza, we just need smarter people on our side, don't we? I mean, Dinesh D'Souza, well, thank you for coming back for the second day of this effort. And that video, we wanted to show you a little bit about what makes Americans for Prosperity and your involvement at Burn. We're a state-based organization. You saw a lot of the state directors, you saw a lot of the volunteers out there because the action, the real reform in this country is not in Washington, D.C., is it? We know that. It's out there in the states where people like Governor Scott Walker are showing real courage. You see the Wisconsin guys right here. And you have every right to be proud of what he's doing. I remember standing on a cold January day along the shores of the lake in Milwaukee at that art museum, you know, the Sail Museum, I guess. We launched Americans for Prosperity in January in Wisconsin, in January of '05. I know the accent fooled you, I'm a Southerner. And the blood's a little thinner down south, right? It was like 43 below zero. It was horrifying. There were 16 intrepid grassroots activists that day kicking off Americans for Prosperity in Wisconsin. 16. Today there are over 100,000 across Wisconsin. And that's what's happening in Wisconsin and across this country. And if you wonder why, and I know you wonder why, because it's just little old us, but if you ever wonder why President Obama has chosen to focus his ire on Americans for Prosperity, you ever wonder that?
Yeah.
You ever wonder? Because we're doing things. We have a living, vibrant, breathing organization with you, our Tea Party allies, in state after state, county after county, and candidly, the president has every right to be worried about us. Because we're changing things in this country. Not for political reasons, for policy reasons. We're changing things. And that brings us to, in our view, the defining issue facing our country right now. It's the size of government, the spending, the deficits, the debt that are literally having us on the road to financial ruin. And we see that across our country. We see it here in Washington especially. We look at this debt limit deal that was cut back in late January or late July. And candidly, we were very disappointed in the Republican leadership in the House for cutting that deal. It was a bad deal. It was. And we look at what that debt deal has brought us. We see a congressional super committee. Have you been following this? I know you have, because you're dialed in. 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans. They come up with a plan, and have you noticed all the hand-wringing? Oh, we've got to cut 1.5 trillion. How do we do that? That's such an insurmountable number over 10 years. By the way, at the current rate of spending over the next decade, they're bemoaning cutting $1.5 trillion. Over the next decade, you know how much the government's slated to spend right now? Over $47 trillion. Now look, I'm a Virginia Tech liberal arts major. Full disclosure, my math isn't my strong suit. That's not much in the way of cutting and changing the size of government, is it? We've got to cut deeper and further, and not just for the sake of cutting, although that's important. We got to do it for the sake of job creation and entrepreneurial growth and the ability to bring prosperity back to our country. That's what's at stake with this spending battle we're undertaking. So this congressional super committee, by November 23rd, they're supposed to report out their proposal to cut the spending. And then here's the dangerous part. By December 23rd, the House and the Senate have to vote on this legislation. No amendments are allowed. No changes to the proposal from the Congressional Super Committee. No filibuster if it's a bad deal in the Senate. It's an up or down vote 2 days before Christmas. And here's the alarming part. I don't know if you saw this. You've been here, and thank you for being here over the last 36 hours. But roughly 100 members of the House signed a letter to the Congressional Super Committee members saying that the cuts need to be balanced with revenue enhancements. Any idea what we think revenue enhancements means to these politicians? Tax increases, that's exactly right. And here's the alarming part, and here's the reason Americans for Prosperity is not about any one party. We're not for a third party, by the way, but we're not about any one party. We're a genuine movement organization. Dozens of Republican House members signed that letter, okay? So we've got to stay vigilant. By Monday, we'll have these names posted on our website. Make sure you go. We're going to have to tell these guys that's wrong. Are you with me on that? We're going to do that. Because, look, politicians in both parties have to be held accountable. And we're going to do it. And Monday, those names are going to be there. We'll also shoot you an email about it. We're going to be respectful and civil, unlike the left-wing nuts last night. We're going to be respectful and civil, but we are going to be insistent, and we're going to be organizing about the business of our country in the coming weeks and months, all right? That's what we're going to do. So when we realized just how bad this debt limit deal was, we decided to be proactive. So we hit the road with a Cut Spending Now tour. We started it in Shelton, Washington, a little lumber town about 30 miles south, maybe a little west of Seattle. We went to Washington State because that's the home of the Democrat co-chair of the Congressional Super Committee, Senator Patty Murray. We wanted to start in the home area of one of those chairs. And it was interesting and ironic that we picked Shelton, Washington. You see, Shelton, 25 years ago, was one of the big, booming towns in Washington State. The timber business was growing and providing good jobs. And then government regulators for the spotted owl, remember the spotted owl? Decided that those timber jobs were not nearly as important. And so with federal regulation, without acts of Congress, but with unelected bureaucrats, they literally destroyed the economy, the business, and the vitality of that town. Now it's slowly coming back, but if you want to see what government regulation and red tape can do in the real world, just look around you. We did in Shelton, Washington that day, and here's the great irony of that. The spotted owl that was so important to protect, after being protected now, is on the decline again. Because, shockingly, there's another owl out there, and apparently, I'm not kidding, apparently it's meaner, bigger, stronger. I guess Darwin got involved, I don't know. And it's killing and eating the spotted owl, all right? Now, and here's the beautiful part. Now the environmental regulators, they're shooting this new owl. I'm not kidding, Bill Kirpin talked about this. So enough on spotted owls in Shelton, Washington. But we launched this Cut Spending Now effort. We've taken it across the country. We've been in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Florida, Virginia, Maryland, across the country with this message to say to the Congressional Super Committee and to every member of Congress, look, when this commission or this Congressional Super Committee comes forward, if it includes $1 of taxes, or if it fails to genuinely cut government to change the trajectory that we're seeing now in government growth, you better vote it down. That's the message we have to discuss now. And so you're going to see that continuing in coming days and weeks. We have a big fight ahead of us, guys. Circle that date, November 23rd. That's when the proposal comes out. We've got to keep the pressure, even now, though, on these members in preparation for that. Normally, November, December is a little slower time in the public policy battles at the federal level. Not this year. This year, it's a big time because we can't afford to lose this effort. And so we're going to have those names posted, the 100 or so members who signed it, Democrat and Republican. We're going to ask you to urge them to change their ways. We're also going to ask you to talk to the leadership of both parties, to tell them, don't you dare do this. Let's tell the Speaker on the Republican side, let's tell the Democrats as well, we've got to win this effort and cut spending. So that's what we're going to do. Now, many of you know these great Americans for Prosperity state directors, but I got to tell you something. One of the most exciting and humbling things that I've ever gotten to do is to work with these men and women. You know, one of the things our board talks to us a lot about is staying humble. That humility, servant leadership, is the way you really move things forward. We see enough of the opposite of that in these politicians. Let's make sure the movement is about servant leadership and humility and genuinely building an organization that reaches out and touches people. That's what we do in America for Prosperity. And would you like to meet these state directors? Could I bring them up here? Is that all right? Guys, would you come on over? I just want, if you would, for these state directors from across the country, I want you to see them. They're not the best looking group, I'm going to be totally honest, all right? So just smile and you know, just try to help them out. But guys, could you come on up? Alan Cobb and Teresa Oki, and where are you? Oh, here they come right now. Come right on up, guys. And last but not least, Steve Lonergan. Come on up here, Steve, from New Jersey. For what you do. If you want to get to know some of the greatest Americans around, get to know these ladies and gentlemen. And they're committed to working with you to take this country in a new direction. And guys, on behalf, I think, of the activists, I consider myself an activist, thank you for what you do. The hours, the time, thank you for what you do. All right. Well, there's a guy that I get to introduce next that has literally shaken the political establishment across the country. He's taken new media, a domain that was dominated by the left for many years, and he's become one of our best, if not the best, free market